You guys like a good mystery, don't you? Well, we've got one for you today. A 38-year-old mystery, and one that has stumped even the Knight Rider historians. An automotive enigma, if you will, that begins and ends in Season 3. But it's a Pontiac puzzle that we simply must solve. But we're just missing that one key final piece. So what is this car conundrum that we are alluding to? And are there any other synonyms of the word mystery that we can tease you with? Today, we're going to investigate Season 3's stock nose kit, as we call it, and see if we can figure out exactly which car this is. Stick around. It's about to get interesting. So before we dig in, let's talk for a moment about filming order versus production order of Season 3. It's important, trust me. Knight Rider was not filmed in the same order that it aired. Our mysterious stock nose kit only appears in that configuration in Season 3, so that's the time frame that we're going to focus on. So with that being said, here is the order in which Season 3 was filmed. Now, we're not going to read all these to you, but you're going to notice right off the bat that the first episode filmed for Season 3 was not Night of the Drones. In fact, Night of the Drones was the 5th episode filmed for Season 3. The first one was Kit vs. Car, followed by Lost Night, Night in Disgrace, The Ice Bandits, and then Night of the Drones. And we're not going to go through the rest of them, but you can see here that they're just slightly out of order. But the season finale, Night Strike, does happen to be both the last episode filmed and the last episode aired for Season 3. So, out of these Season 3 episodes, our stock nose kit appeared in 5 of them. They are The Ice Bandits, Night of the Drones, Night by a Nose, 10-Wheel Trouble, and Night Strike. So let's examine each one of those appearances, starting with the Ice Bandits, and let's see what we can figure out about this car. All right, so here we go. This is a scene towards the end of the episode where Michael was just injected with a sedative and calls for Kit. Kit, meanwhile, is parked outside the monk's cellar with 2 monks sitting inside of him, activates, backs up this road, and goes to save Michael. Now, this is the very first time in this episode that we see this configuration. Now, those of you who are watching the show in the order that it aired know that the stock nose kit appeared in the Season 3 premiere, Night of the Drones. But we're going in production order. So in production order, would be the first time you would see this car. So what do we see here, right? We see a factory 1982 through 1984 Trans Am front bumper cover. We see that the scanner opening has been cut out of the center section of the stock bumper. And then we can also see the fog lights here. Now, for those of you familiar with the 82 through 84 Trans Ams, behind this bumper cover is a steel reinforcement bar. It's a crash bar, right? So if the car's in an accident, that crash bar helps to absorb some of the impact. In order for these fog lights to be placed in here, they had to remove that steel impact bumper. So that's what they did, and they placed these in here. You can see all they did was they removed the factory vent covers. There's bumper vent covers for 82 through 84. They just removed those to expose the fog lights here. What else can we see here? Not too much more. We see there is no camera tow bar attached to this car, right? And that'll be important here in a little bit. So let's advance through. So we see the car backing up, and then it backs up a little more, and we see it start to move forward. Unfortunately, this poorly placed pot of plants, that's a lot of P's, poorly placed pot of plants, anyways, masks a lot of the car. But we do see there's no license plate on the car, and we can see some of the screw holes for the rear blackout. And it's hard to see here, and we'll show it to you in better detail later, but there's actually a ton of screws, I think 12 of them maybe, across the top, 12 or 16 across the top here, which normally most Knight Rider cars did not have that. So that'll be another way we'll identify that this particular car. Okay, so in terms of this episode, this is all we see of the stock nose kit. So now let's move forward to Night of the Drones and go over that. So now we're at Night of the Drones, and we see the stock nose kit in two specific scenes in this episode. This one occurs at the conclusion of the chase between KITT and the red Ford Thunderbird drone car. And the appearances in this episode tell us a lot about this car. So let's take a look at what we can see here. So this is the first couple frames of what we see. It doesn't show too much here, but let's advance through and show you something here. So the car's coming around, spinning around, and take a look at this. Look at this gap back here. You see how this car is sitting way up in the back. We can also see the nice side profile of the stock bumper there with the grills missing, no tow bar there. We do see a skid plate, the outline of a skid plate under here. We see it as T-tops, and we see it's got a non-defrost rear windshield. And let me back up a little bit. You can see just barely it's got the dual resonator exhaust. So we know this is a Trans Am. It's not a Firebird or Firebird SE. We know it's a Trans Am 82 through 84. But this gap right here, now you might think that this is just the way the car's looking because they're coming in for, they're sliding. They're coming in for a stop. But let's advance a little bit further here. So the car spins around, comes here, and stops. And what you see here, the car is completely stopped. But take a look at this gap in the back end. That is not a factory Trans Am stance. To our knowledge, there were only two cars that were ever outfitted with something that would make the car have this stance. And that's the high traction drop downs from Season 2's Speed Demons. We've covered this in our episode commentary. If you go back to the Speed Demons episode commentary, we talk about this. But for that episode, whenever they wanted to outfit KITT with these high traction drop downs, in reality what they did was they put a hydraulic pump in the trunk, connected it to 4 hydraulic rams, one on each corner of the car. When the hydraulic pump was activated, it pressed on these rams, pressed on the suspension, and caused the car to lift up. The front was able to lift a couple inches, the back was able to lift a couple more inches. So we know from watching this, there's no reason why this particular car would be outfitted with something like that for this scene. So we feel reasonably certain that this has to be one of the two high traction drop down cars from Speed Demons. Now, one of those two high traction drop down cars still exists, and we own it, right? It's the car that's currently in the Peterson. It was the backup to the Hero car. It's not, the high traction drop downs are not functional currently, but the evidence is still there. The hydraulic rams are still on the front of it. We have the holes cut out for where they were mounted in the back. So we know that that we have a high traction drop down car. Now the question is this our car, and for some reason it has this weird funky stock nose bumper, or is it the other high traction drop down car? Or did they make a third one that we don't know about? Doubtful, but all right, so let's continue on and see if we can determine anything else about this car. All right, so now it moves on. That was the end of the scene right there. But then we see this stock nose KITT again later whenever Michael and KITT are trying to find Bonnie. They go to the warehouse and KITT, prepares to break down the door. So we start here. This is the first few frames of when we see this car. And we see Michael pull away in the car. And take a look at this. Look at the headliner. There's absolutely nothing on this headliner. There's not even a dome light here. No sun visors, no cutouts for sun visors, no overhead console, nothing. So we know that this is not a factory. This has been recovered, right? You couldn't get a Trans Am without sun visors, without the dome light. So this overhead, the headliner has been recovered. All right. So moving on. So we see the car pull away. We know it's still the same car. Spins around here. You can clearly see the stock nose, right? So what do we see on the dash? We see it's got the Knight Rider dash, just the shell of it, doesn't have electronics. It's got a small round stunt wheel. All right, pulling around. And look, you can start to see, we mentioned this a minute ago, all of the screw holes along the top of the blackout. Normally, on most of the Knight Rider cars, there were 4 screw holes along the bottom, and then there was a lip across the top that held the top on. But here, for some reason, there was no lip, and they just put a bunch of screws in the top. All right? And then we get this fantastic shot where you can really see, you can even see the tabs of where the factory Trans Am fender vent covers mounted. I mean, that's just a great shot. You can see the skid plate under there as well. And that's all we see of this car in Night of the Drones. All right, so now let's move forward and let's examine this car in the next episode it's featured in, which is Night by a Nose. Now, Night by a Nose, we told you that Night of the Drones was the 5th episode filmed for season 3. Well, Night by a Nose is what? Let's see, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The 11th episode to air. So this car wasn't used for 6 episodes, right? So let's take a look at Stock Nose Kit from Night by a Nose. We get another great look at it here. Although it starts out with not a great look. All right. So this is the scene towards the end of the episode where Kit cuts in front of the limo and King Jack the horse is in the horse trailer in front of the limo. Kit cuts them off. The guy rear ends them. He does the oil slick and all that stuff. So you have to watch carefully here, but you can see if we look here in the reflection of the limo's mirror, we can see that Stock Nose Kit here. Now, what you may notice is the fog lights look a little smaller. They're actually the exact same fog lights, but what they did between the filming of Night of the Drones and the filming of Night by a Nose is they added a metal frame around that it fit in the stock Trans Am bumper cover opening, but it's a metal frame here to clean up this area so it didn't look so unfinished. And we have this great behind the scenes shot from this episode, and you can see here how they added this frame around the fog lights. So it's the same fog lights, they just updated the look a little bit. All right, so then the car pulls forward, and what do we see here? Not much. And then it passes, and right here, so we see Kit coming in front. Now take a look at this. The car, it's hard to see, but you can see the outline here. The car now has an overhead console in it. That's what that is right there. That's what that's dipping down, what you see dipping down there. And here is a great look at all of those screw holes. I'm sorry, there's 9, not 12 or 16. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 across the top here. So it cuts in front, and there, you get a better look at the overhead console there. We can also see it's got a single solid rear back seat, right? In some 83s and 84 Trans Ams, these were 2-piece, but this is a 1-piece. But then here, we take a look at this angle, and you can see a better look at all those screw holes there. We see the dual resonator exhaust and something funky hanging down right there. And then we see this shot, cars spinning out of control. And then that's the end. That's all we see of this car in this episode. All right, moving forward, let's take a look at it in 10-wheel trouble. Now, in 10-wheel trouble, this is interesting, right? Because first I'm going to show you this, which is not the Stock Nose Kit, right? We have this scene where Kit is skiing near the beginning of the episode. Kit's skiing to get past a narrow road. We can clearly see this is not the Stock Nose Kit. This is actually one of their T-top stunt cars that was used throughout the rest of the series. But from this angle, it's not this car. However, take a look at this. It then switches to a back view. And what do we see? Look at that blackout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The exact same screw pattern on the blackout here. Now, you might think, oh, well, at this point in the series, they just put the Trans Am or the Knight Rider bumper on the front of the car and got rid of the stock nose, and that was that. Well, no, they didn't, because we've got one more episode where we clearly see the stock nose on KITT. So my guess is that this is two different cars skiing. We see the one from the front, and for some reason they needed to film it from the back, and they used a different car. And that would be one possible explanation here as to what's going on. And it might just be me, but does it look like this resonator exhaust is offset? And maybe it's just because we're looking at an angle, but it almost looks like it's not centered. And maybe that'll help us identify this car. I don't know. But this is the one and only scene in 10 Wheel Trouble where we see the stock nose KITT, only from behind. And then finally, in the Season 3 finale, the last episode filmed for Season 3, we get this beautiful scene towards the end of the episode. Again, clearly stock nose KITT. Clearly an overhead console has been placed in the car there. Coming around the bend here. We don't see much of the interior. We still see it's got the fake Knight Rider dash and a round stunt wheel. And then it busts through the gate. And right there, that's the end. That's the last time we see this car in this configuration. So, now that you know all of that, now we need to figure out which car this is. Be sure to take a peek at our exclusive merch, not found anywhere else, like our Knight Rider Historians and Semi-Restoration Team branded apparel, along with our line of Garthwear, trademark pending. T-shirts, hoodies, even coffee mugs in a variety of colors and styles to suit every taste. Your purchase directly supports this channel and helps us to continue bringing you awesome content. View the merch below this video and click on the link in the description for our entire catalog. Alright, so we've reviewed all of the existing screenshots of the stock nose KITT. So we know that stock nose KITT had a high traction drop down feature added to it. You can tell that clearly by the screenshots from Night of the Drones. So our next logical step is, let's examine the two cars used in Speed Demons for the high traction drop downs. What you're looking at here is the first car. So what can we see here, right? Well, it's T-Top, Trans Am. We see that they've replaced the rear rims with 14-inch TurboCast rims with these high country all-terrain tires. But as we move forward, so you can see it activating there. We see there's no rear defrost. Then the car backs up, and now we get a look at the front of it. So we can tell here the car has no camera tow bar, and also it still has its fog light grills, which at this point in the series is kind of rare. There's very few cars that still have their fog light grills. What else do we see? We've got the Season 2 front nose, which is correct. But then look up here. There's no overhead console, but there is black tape covering the headliner right there, right? As he comes around the corner, you can see just some black tape up there. So there's no overhead, no camera tow bar, fog light grills. Anything else we see? We do see the mirror mount right there, right? And then it transitions to the scenes on the dirt track here. If you look here closely, you can see there are fog lights behind that grill. You can just barely make them out. Comes around the bend. Landing. I think the key to knowing that this is still the same car, at least from the front, is that rear view mirror mount right there that they didn't bother to take off. That's going to become key, I think. We see it's got a solid rear back seat. What else? See, clearly high traction drop down car. No dash. You can see the stock Trans Am dash here with the round gauges. Anything else? So right there, there's a small round steering wheel. What else here? So Michael comes in. Yeah, there's Hasselhoff driving the first high traction drop down car again. Still have the small round stunt wheel. I'm not sure we see too many other details. There's a close-up of the rear tires. We can see the aftermarket rivet on side trim, which doesn't really tell us much because all the cars had that at this point. And then the rear end view. So, you know, there's not a ton to glean from this, but we do learn that it's a Trans Am. We see the dual resonator exhaust here. We got to know it has T-tops and all that stuff. So I think what's best to do now is to look at the other high traction drop-down car, and that's our car. Our insert car right here. Now, for the majority of this episode, all we see are insert shots of our insert car. But there are a couple scenes later in the episode, right here, where you see more of our car, the high traction drop down car. And it's interesting because in watching this episode, all we ever see of the outside of our car is this front view right here. We never see a side view to confirm that it has a high traction drop downs. However, we own the car. We can see that it was modified for high traction drop downs. So we know 100% that this car had high traction drop downs even without seeing it from the side. But beyond that, you can see it has an overhead console. There's no rear view mirror mount, and you know, this is one of the other few cars, ironically, that does have the fog light grills at this point in the series also. But and you can see the camera tow bar here, and actually you can see the attachment to the camera truck right there. So this is our car, but this is all we see of it in this episode. So then let's fast forward to KITT versus car. Now, we know, again, for 100% fact that this car that they pull out of the sand is our car as well. We have the production call sheets that list this car as being used this day in this location. We know this is our car. So, and we can see the high traction drop downs are engaged here, which makes sense, right? Jack Gill's trying to get traction to get out of the sand, and by lifting the car up, it provides additional ground clearance. And beyond that, whenever the car, you know, whenever they pull out with the car, you can see the rear end sits up pretty high. Oops, let's go back. So this is clearly our car, high traction drop down car. So what we didn't see in Speed Demons, the side view and back view of our car with the high traction drop downs activated, we see here. So then things go pretty quiet for a long time until Season 4's Hills of Fire, near the very end. And we get this brief blink and you'll miss it shot of our car as well with the high traction drop downs engaged. So take a look at that. You can clearly see, looks like they didn't engage the front ones, but the back ones were engaged. And you can see the camera tow bar there. This is definitely our car as well. So now the question is, well, when we look at the stock nose KITT, which of these two cars is it? Now, here's where some of the confusion comes in. So what you're looking at here is a screenshot, obviously, from Junkyard Dog. We see this car being pulled out of the acid pit. Now take a look at the back end of that car. See how low it sits. What would be our explanation for why this car sits that low? Well, because we own one of the high traction drop down cars, and we know the hydraulic system that controlled the high traction drop downs is inoperable. So the hydraulic cylinders are at their full, not deflated, what's the word? Retracted position. So if you look at our car today, and here's a photo of it. Well, this isn't today, but this is pretty much what it looks like. Look how low our car sits in the front and the back. And that's because the high traction drop down setup, all the hydraulic lines are gone. So all of those rams, the hydraulic rams, are all in their fully retracted position, so the car sits down very low. So when we go back and we look here, well, that looks very similar, right, to how our car looks. And we know they gutted this car, so the natural inclination is to think, well, this is one of those two high traction drop down cars. They removed all the hydraulic lines before they dumped it in the toxic waste pit, and as a result, that's what you see. Now in the front, we see the car jacked up because we know this car does not have an engine in it, right? So there's none of that, I don't know, 500-600 pounds pushing down on the front of the suspension, so it's kind of jacked up. So that leads us to think, well, maybe this is one of the two high traction drop down cars. But here's where it starts to get confusing, because if you remember, the stock nose kit appears, the last appearance is in Night Strike, which was filmed after Junkyard Dog. We know that this particular car was not refurbished back into a regular Knight Rider car. It sat looking exactly like it does until the summer of 1985, when George Barris's crew took it, modified it, and turned it into the transforming Super Pursuit car. So we know that this car never returned back to being a regular kit. But I don't think the stock nose kit is our car either, and here's why. So what you're looking at here is a comparison shot. The top is our car. The bottom is from the Ice Bandits. We wanted to find the closest comparison we could find of a dead-on straight shot. So beyond the fact that our car has camera tow bar receivers, which you can see here, skid plate right there, our main focus is going to be on the fog lights. So let's zoom in on the fog lights. Okay. Now I know the bottom one's a little blurry, but it's the best we could do. So take a look at the fog light placement. Now, in our car here, when we got the car, it actually didn't have any fog lights in it. They had been removed and a car show external speaker was placed in it. We sourced the exact make and model of fog lights that were in here and put them back in the car. The crash impact bar that we talked about earlier in this video is still in this car. And let me clarify. It is the crash bar is in the bottom picture as well. It's not the metal crash bar. I was mistaken in the way I talked. It's not the metal crash bar that was removed. In front of the metal crash bar is a plastic honeycomb mesh that is riveted onto the steel reinforcement. That's what's removed. That steel bar always remains. And that's how the fog lights are mounted. So the steel reinforcement bar on our car is the original one from when the car was built in 1982. So how do we know that? Because the crash bar on our car had all three fog light mounts on each side. And as those of you who are familiar with the show know, the fog lights changed. In season 1, there was 3 per side. By season 2, they switched them to 2 per side. So if this was not the original, and we know our car is one of the original pilot cars, so if this crash bar had ever been changed, it would not have the holes for 3 fog lights on each side. It would only have 2. So we know the fog light placement you see here is the only fog light placement that ours could have. But take a look at the stock nose kit and look at how things line up or don't line up, right? Take a look at the headlight door. So if we come straight down from the headlight door, it kind of bifurcates this second fog light, right? Like you bring it right down here, there's a large chunk to the left and a smaller chunk to the right. Well, look at our car. You come straight down and it bifurcates that same fog light, but there's only a tiny, tiny bit to the left of that line and the rest is to the right. And we know our fog lights could never have been mounted in this configuration on this car because there are no holes. There's not a hole here and there's not a hole here, which is what it would require for the fog lights to look like this and be in this position. So that's our justification to say that these aren't the same cars. In addition, if you remember back in when we were going over, what was it, Night of the Drones. So we were going over Night of the Drones and we showed you, let me bring up the pictures here. One moment. We showed you these photos, right? So there's no headline, or I'm sorry, there's no overhead console. And our car The overhead console in the car to this day is still the same one used in season 2. So maybe they removed it for this scene. Sure, they absolutely could have. But then you look at this screenshot from Night of the Drones, and there's no camera tow bar under here. And you think, well, why would they remove the camera tow bar and then put it back on? So, all that, plus the fog light mounting, tells us this probably is not our car. But if it's not our car, and the other high traction drop-down car was destroyed in Junkyard Dog, but we still see this car in Night Strike, then what car is this? So there's a couple possibilities. First, the other high traction drop-down car was not the Junkyard Dog car that was pulled out of the acid pit, right? Maybe it's an optical illusion, or not an optical illusion, but maybe just looking at it, and let me bring that shot back up here. Maybe just looking at the this picture and seeing this sunk down, maybe it's something else. Maybe, I don't know, does this make sense? Could it be all of the weight of the sludge inside of the car? Because remember, they pulled out, you can see it's still dripping out of the back of the car. Part of me wants to say, I highly doubt it. That would have to be a ton of weight to push the car down that much. But maybe, I don't know. So really, this stock nose kit is a bit of a mystery. So there you go. So in wrapping this video up, I don't have any definitive answers on the stock nose kit and why it only appears in season 3 for those 5 appearances. Maybe I missed it in season 4. Why don't you guys do some detective work? Can you spot the stock nose kit anywhere in season 4? Obviously, you're looking for the stock nose, but I think the real giveaway might be this taillight blackout with these 9 screws across the top, right? There's no other car that had a blackout that was just screwed on so mercilessly than this car. So maybe it does appear in season 4. I have yet to be able to find it, but we're hoping one day to be able to answer this mystery. So for all of you who tuned into this video at the very beginning thinking, yes, the Knight Rider historians have all the answers. Well, we don't. This is one mystery that lingers to this day. One day, we hope to do an update video that will shine the light on this car and its history and what happened. But for now, it remains a mystery. So I hope you liked this deep dive into the minutia of a specific car. Let me know in the comments below if you did. Maybe we'll do it on some of the other odd Knight Rider cars that we've seen throughout the series. So, all right. As always, we definitely appreciate you spending your time with us. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.
And now, while we listen to Joe's selection of Knight Rider music that we received directly from Don Peak himself, we'd like to thank these Patreon supporters. Look at you guys scrolling up the screen to my right. Wait a minute, how can you tell which side is my right since you can't see me because I'm not on camera? Oh well, you know what I mean. We're featuring these fine supporters at our Knight Rider Prop Restorer level. Thank you very much for your support. And for those of you at the Knight Rider History Hunter level, we're recognizing you right now in the description. Now, if you enjoyed seeing this golden nugget of Knight Rider history being rescued from obscurity, then please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support would empower us to bring you even more of these historical nuggets. We are the Knight Rider Historians. Till next time, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.